Happy Tuesday, everyone. Well, I told you all yesterday in my video that I would be giving you all my story. And I am going to do that. It's going to be near the end of the video. But throughout this, I'm going to show you all some things that just give you something to think about. First thing I wanted to tell you, I want to remind you all again that next Monday, my husband will be having a heart cath done. And so I'm not sure about getting video up during that time. You know, if they don't find anything, it'll be, in and out, and everything will be hunky-dory, and I'll probably get videos up quickly. But if they do find something, then it might not be so quickly. So anyway, I was thinking about this last night and thinking, I was following what I was taught in school. And then I learned that what I was taught in school was not quite what they made it out to be. And so let me show you this. How many of y'all remember the food pyramid? I think I can get this where you can see that. You see what it's got? The pastas, the grains, the potatoes, the bread, all that stuff on the bottom. And then the next row up has fruits and vegetables, and then it's got dairy and meat, and then it's got your fats, butter, all that kind of stuff on the top. Well, I learned the hard way. That's not necessarily right. So I'm going to ask you all this question. Is what you are eating making you sick? It was making me sick. And I'm not talking about just sick a day or two. I'm talking about long-term sick. So now I found out today that when the food pyramid was first done, it was done during the 40s because there were food shortages. We talked about food shortages yesterday. It was done to help people not starve, I guess. But it was not necessarily the healthiest way for them to eat. So I'm going to show you a more current food pyramid. And it's all changed around, but I still don't think it's right. If you look at this one, you'll see down on the very bottom, they're showing some exercise there now. And they're showing, your plate and with the drink. Well, on the next row up, you can see some healthy fats. You can see some fruits and vegetables and some grains. And then the next row up, you see the meats, and it's got, let me look at that again, make sure I'm seeing it right. Yeah, your fish, poultry, eggs, those kinds of things. And then up above that's your dairy. And then on the very top of it, it has got, to use sparingly, red meat, butter, refined grains, white bread, pasta, sugary drinks, sweets, and salt. So, and then out on the outside of that, it's got multivitamins and alcohol and some things like that that are not in the food pyramid. So, in looking at these food pyramids, I'm thinking, okay, if these were right, why was it making me sick? And so, I'm going to tell you all some things today. I have spent the better part of the last 15 years doing research because I was very sick. This is another chart that I found. And you can see on that plate, it's got whole grains and it's got healthy protein, vegetables, fruits, your stay active, healthy oils, and your water. That is closer to what I believe might be right. But I want to just give you an example, just give you some examples of why I'm telling you all this. It's been close to 15 years ago now. It's actually been longer than that when it started. I was working and I was just so sick. I would tell my husband, I was working in Knoxville, Tennessee at the time. Depending on traffic. So then, fast forward a few, I left Knoxville and came to a neighboring town and went to work in a police department. And while I was there, even though I was using the CPAP machine, I was still just so exhausted. And I got where I couldn't remember things. And of course, being exhausted, that's something that will happen with that too. So it progressed until one of my doctors said, Diane, you can't go back to work. So I left work, came out on medical leave, and I ended up after I was on medical leave, I was on short-term and then long-term disability from work. I ended up filing for disability, and I actually went on disability. And so I thought, there's got to be an answer to this. And so during my research, I found a doctor that was saying to drink half of your body weight in ounces of water every day. Well, I never drank water. I mean, never. So I started doing that, and that did give me some improvement, but it wasn't what I was looking for. And so I tried all kinds of vitamins and, just everything. And this went on for years. And during that time, I was in the bed. Well, the doctor eventually, when they told me that I could not go back to work, they diagnosed me with fibromyalgia. And at the time, my memory was getting so bad that my family thought I was getting dementia. And so that's when my doctor put me out of work, and they told me I had fibromyalgia. And so after I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia and I had to leave my job, and of course, leaving my job did not help. I could sleep all day long and wake up and still feel exhausted beyond anything I had ever imagined. So anyway, one day my daughter came in and she said, Mom, why don't we try the ketogenic diet? And I thought, what's that? I'd never heard of it before. And so over the past, 10 years, I had already given up sodas. I had given up caffeine. I had cut my sugar intake as far as adding sugar to my coffee. I still did that, but I was still getting quite a bit of sugar. But anyway, she said, why don't you just try it with me? Well, I had already cut a lot of stuff out of my diet. And so I thought, okay, I'll try it. And so within 3 days of going on the ketogenic diet, I had more energy than I had since I was a teenager. And I was in my 50s by this time. Actually, I was close to 60, I guess, by then. And so I started walking. I was walking 5 miles a day. I started working with Girl Scouts. And just all kinds of energy. And so I started looking at it to see, okay, what was it? Now, for those of you that may not be familiar with ketogenic diet, the biggest thing that you eat on a ketogenic diet, the most grams as far as fats, carbs, proteins, and things like that, your largest thing to eat is your fat. Now, y'all know that I go to church and I read my Bible, and I started paying attention as I was reading my Bible, started paying attention to all the places that it talked about the fat, the animal fat, and how they kept that animal fat. And so while I was doing that ketogenic diet, there was days that I did not get 10 grams of carbs, but I was eating 150 grams of fat, and I was getting 70 grams of protein, and all of the carbs that I was getting was mainly from my green vegetables and maybe an occasional piece of fruit like some berries. And I developed all kinds of recipes during that time and in fact, I put one of those recipes on here several months ago on how I made low-carb bread. But I've continued to study this. And in some of my findings, y'all know that I use fresh milled flour for some of my recipes. I've made bread from fresh milled flour. And for those of you that follow Sue Becker on Bread Beckers on YouTube, you'll know that when the factories started grinding the flour and selling it in the grocery store, they were separating the wheat and the germ, and they were discarding that and giving it to the animals, and they were using the rest of it to make the flour. And during that time when they first started, people started getting sick, and they were getting mentally sick. And then they realized that they had stripped all the B vitamins out of that flour. So when you go in the grocery store now and it says enriched bleached on your flour, they literally are bleaching. Flour's not supposed to be white. It is supposed to be a beige or a light tan color, depending on the grain that you're using. And they re-enriched it with about 7 or 8 vitamins, but they had stripped out probably between 40 and 50 nutrients and vitamins out of that grain. And so the bread that we have nowadays in the grocery store is nothing to compare with what it was, in the centuries before that. So that's one thing that I learned. And of course, I mean, y'all haven't been under a bucket. You know that the food you get in the grocery store is so full of additives and preservatives and food dyes and all that kind of stuff. It's no wonder people have cancer. And so, I mean, it's just full of junk. And so that's another part of it. But when I was doing the low-carb diet, the ketogenic diet, I don't do it anymore, but I still eat low-carb. And when I make my cup of coffee, I can show you right here. See that? When I make that cup of coffee, it will be that full, where my thumb is right there. It'll have that much heavy whipping cream in the bottom of that cup. That's about a 15-ounce cup, and I probably put a good 2 ounces of heavy whipping cream in that cup, and I eat it I mean, I drink it a couple of times a day, at least. And I had done away with margarine many years ago and started using real butter. And then I did away with seed oils and corn oil. You ever squeeze the ear of corn and get oil out of it? It's impossible. So I keep avocado oil, and I keep coconut oil, and I have tallow, which y'all have seen me render tallow, and I've rendered the lard, the fat from the pig. I've rendered that, and I save all of my bacon grease. And so I use those. And when I'm making vegetables, I add some fat to my vegetables. And a lot of people are like, what does that do to your cholesterol? Well, I learned this too. Your brain barrier is cholesterol. And when you go on low cholesterol drugs, then you're asking for dementia. And when you don't get enough fat, and that's what the Bible was talking about, when they were eating the fat, it's to keep your organs healthy, your brain, and all your organs in your body. It's to keep that fat keeps your body healthy. And I added nuts. And y'all have seen my video on yogurt, homemade yogurt. And I add those to my diet. And so the yogurt, of course, is good for your gut. And the doctor had told me that my cholesterol was getting bad. This was long before the ketogenic diet. And I added this. At that time, I was buying store-bought yogurt and adding nuts to it, pecans and walnuts, stuff like that, every day. Just a small little handful of nuts. And when I went back to the doctor, my cholesterol was way below where it had been, even though I was adding fats to my diet. And even though I was still eating butter every day, spread a big wad of butter on some toast. And so, as a matter of fact, during that time, the doctor, the rheumatologist that I was seeing, she kept saying, "Diane, let me drive the bus. Let me drive the bus." And the last time I saw her, she said, "So much for driving the bus," because Diane's responsible for Diane's health. And so I kept on and kept on doing the research. And so I'm telling you all this. I was in bed for, probably 10 years, close to 10 years. I was in bed. I mean, if I had a good day, I used that day to get up and, clean my bathroom, make sure my kitchen was clean, make sure my bed sheets were clean, do my laundry, and do, whatever I could during that day that I had a good day. And then I'd be back in bed. It put me back in bed for several more days because I had overdone it. And my muscles would hurt so bad. And then, of course, I was going to the doctor then, and they had me on so much medicine. One day I was hurting so bad, and I went in and got in a hot tub of water just to see if it would relax my muscles so that I could rest. And when I got in that water, I could smell the chemical reaction from all of the drugs that were in my body coming out into my bath water. And I called my pharmacy, and I called my doctor's office, and they could not answer my questions about the chemical reactions. And so I got on the internet, and I found a website. I believe it was drugs.com. I put all of my medicines in there, and it will give you, if you've got chemical reactions or reactions between your medications. And I had red flags everywhere. So I started flushing some medicines. I called my doctor and told her I'm not taking any more. Don't offer me any more. And so I started changing my eating habits and even a lot of the vitamins that I was taking. I changed a lot of them and started going to vitamins that are organic and, made in America and things like that. Until, of course, when I went on that ketogenic diet, within 3 days, I was up, cleaned my whole house. My husband had been sick at that time, and I think he had surgery. I mowed the yard, pressure washed the house on the outside, all just in 2 or 3 days. And my family was like, "What in the world is going on with our mama or mama?" And they just couldn't believe it because I had been in bed for so long. So I hope this has given you something to think about. Look real close at what you're eating, what you're putting in your body, because this didn't happen to me overnight. This happened to me over a period of many years of trying to eat according to a food pyramid that I was given in school that was totally out of date. It was something that was created in the 40s, and it was not created for nutrition. It was created to keep people from starving to death. And you can go on the internet. It was a government website that I read that on. You can go on there. It may be on this paperwork here that I've got in front of me. Nutrition source. That one's Harvard University. But anyway, you can go on the internet and look it up. It's there. And know exactly what happened. But once I learned that it was the carbs, and sugar was never supposed to be white. Real sugar is a light brown color. And the bleaching process that they put this through, I mean, who wants bleach in their body? It should have never been that way. And the sodas that I used to put in my body, I mean, loaded with sugar and sodium. And, they tell you don't salt your food and stuff like that. But I'm going to tell you something. If you cut the junk, the carbs, and I'm not talking about healthy vegetables. I'm talking about junk food, potato chips, a lot of the ice creams. If you want ice cream, make it at home. If you cut a lot of that stuff out of your diet, if you've got high blood pressure and diabetes and things like that, we did a test when I made the Ezekiel bread that is on my channel. I made the Ezekiel bread, and my son is a diabetic, and it did not raise his blood sugar. My daughter tested her blood sugar before she ate it, and then after she ate it. It did not raise it, maybe 20 points or something like that. It didn't shoot it out real bad like it did, like if they ate bread from the grocery store. So I hope that something that I've said today will help someone to get their health back. Because being in bed or being, so tired that you can't do anything, that's a miserable life. And now I have people say, "Diane, how do you do everything that you do?" I mean, I've got a husband that's sick, and I'm taking care of a sick uncle, and I help take care of my brother. And, I'm busy with the church, and I'm busy doing all the things for this channel, and I've got other channels besides this that I'm working on, that I share all this information and answer people's questions, and I've got more energy than I've had in my life. And it's because I know what's going into my body now. So, anyway, I'm going to leave this with you. If you've got questions, My email address will be under this video. And, of course, you know, the chat's there. If you've got detailed questions, it'll be better if you send me an email because, first of all, that way your information's not out there on the internet. And, you know, that way I can take my time and answer them, you know, without taking up, you know, a whole lot of area in the chat. But if you want to put questions in the chat, that's fine too. I'll answer them. And, you know, I'm not suggesting that you go on a ketogenic diet. I'm not doing this to give you medical advice. I'm doing this to tell you, look at yourself. Look at what you're putting in your body and ask questions. Because, I mean, my doctors know. I changed doctors in the middle of COVID. And when I saw my new doctor, I told her up front, if you give me a prescription for anything, I'm going home and research it before I even get it filled. And don't even offer me a vaccine or a shot or anything like that because I'm not taking it. I don't know what they put in that mess. And so, you know, I'm not doing it. God gave us food to heal our bodies. And I believe that. And He gave us the prescription for what foods to eat. It's all in the Bible. I may give y'all some of that. I've done quite a bit of extensive research on Bible foods too. I may give y'all some of that at some point too. So I just want you to research for yourself and see what helps and what hurts. And you might be amazed. So anyway, until the next time, God bless you all.